tutorial about the logistic stations. I've been playing this game almost 600 hours about. So I've actually tried to find out more about these logistic towers or stations, and have learned a lot about them, wanted to share them with you, whatever I have found out. So basically, you probably found out there's three kinds of these stations. It's the Planetary, the Interstellar, and the Orbital. You will basically get to them over the various research you do. The Orbital, I'm not going into that one. Well, I will show you, it's very quick. This basically, you just place it on a gas planet. There's some spread around the different systems. You just put it down and it does all by itself. That will come at the end of the tutorial, just briefly. So I want to go into these, and then mainly the interstellar logistic stations, which are the most important. So these ones are quite easy. You have basically three slots here, and you can define a certain resource that this is going to call, store, or distribute. Let's take, for example, iron ore. I can just put it there, and copper. So in order for this station to receive them, you have here the option of saying either demand, store, or supply. Supply means it will basically give it to any other station on the planet that is basically requesting it, and it will only work within one planet. It will not go on to other planets in the system or in the galaxy. So supply would basically mean that you have, for example, here I'm mining copper. So if I were to bring the copper into this one, here it comes in. So what happens here is that this copper is being stored here, and whoever calls it or needs it on this planet, he will basically transport it there. So let's take an example. I would try and put it here, but he's going to call it from somewhere else also. But nevertheless, let's say he wants to receive copper. So you basically put it on demand. This one is on supply. This one is on demand. So basically he should transport from there to there. And in order to do so, he just needs drones. So you will see he takes the drones, takes the copper out and brings it into this tower. So it's as easy as that. As soon as I put this on storage, they will stop and they will return. The access that was actually brought will not be lost. He will basically bring it back to the source as long as there is space there. There's a couple of settings here which are quite important. The first one is maximum charging power. So the maximum charging power is how quick the tower will charge itself. So currently it's set at 12. So I can crank this up to 60. You will see it on this one better. So you see this one is actually loading quite slow. So if I put it up at 60, it will basically charge it faster. Why is this important? It's quite straightforward. Every time a drone leaves the tower, it will basically drain power here. So you will see here, this one gets empty slowly but surely, and here he drains power. So if you have this on very, very low, he will basically drain power, and if he does this constantly, he will at the end of the day not have enough power in order for doing the transportation, and he will be limited by that. So I would say on a general basis, always put this on full. Transportation of drones is something I have never used, but it basically tells you the range at which a certain drone will actually go. And like I said, I never use it. It's really to direct where you basically want to have certain resources go. You can, depend on how the tower is turned, decide where the resources go. This one, which is important, tells you how much a drone will basically minimum take. What does that mean? Well, let me show you. So let me slowly but surely fill this tower. So you will see as soon as it hits 200, a drone will pick it up. every 200, a drone will pick it up. This means the maximum load is 100%. Each drone can maximum transfer to 200, and every time there is 200 there, a drone will pick it up. Now, if I put this to half, you will see at 100, every time there's 100, he will pick it up. So he's actually faster. He won't wait till the drone, so the drone will go half full. So only with, and I can put this down up to 1%, and you will see the drones will go as quickly as they can. Why would you do this? For these type of towers, I honestly don't really see the use of it, but you could basically have certain resources which are slowly built, so they take a lot of time to be built, and you nevertheless want them to be transported quickly. For resources like these, it's definitely not worth it. So you would basically put it at this rate, and then it would basically only take it at 200. What's the disadvantage of putting it faster? First of all, you drain more power, because every drone is going to use the same amount of power. And at one stage, you won't have enough drones, because there's maximum 50 drones going into this. And then the last item here, which is important, is the output cargo stack count. Now, this is something that you will only get if you have the research on the logistics station integrated logistics. So here, this one, and this one. So what does this basically do? The first one gives you the option when you go here. So the first one, in the beginning, you don't have this. When you basically start the game, you don't see this line. It's not there. Now, when I take a line out of this tower and I go in there, so I'm going to put a filter here. So you see, he takes one copper out and brings it into the other tower. If I put this to 2, I don't know if you noticed, but immediately there's 2 coppers coming out at once. If I put it to 3, there's 3 copper, and if I put it to 4, he will basically take out 4 coppers at once. So they will come out of the tower stacked. What's the advantage? Well, basically this belt, which normally transports 30 items per second, now transports 4 times 30 items per second, so basically 120 items, making it faster to fill. So very important also is, if you, for example, I would say, here I have copper, I'm going to supply. This copper I'm going to delete, don't need it. Now here I have a third tower, which is actually going to demand copper. So I have copper here, I want copper here, and I have drones here. But these drones will only take items from this tower or to this tower. The alternative, if I put in the drones here, they will basically fetch it. So they will fetch it either from here or from anywhere on the planet. And since on this planet, now this is a little bit special, on this planet I have a lot of miners, and you basically see this tower goes everywhere and it spreads the drone. It doesn't go to the closest one, but it basically goes around everywhere on the planet and see, okay, can I get some resources there, and there, and then it will basically go send all the drones, even though it would be most efficient to just go here and empty this one. It will, so you see there's a little bit here, but it will basically circle all the resources available, and it will send in drones everywhere and then bring them in. So the other type of tower is the Interstellar Logistics Station. So we basically saw the Planetary. The Interstellar are almost equivalent in terms of function. They add 2 additional things. The first one is that obviously they are basically going to go interstellar. So they will go anywhere from this planet to any other planet in this system, to any other planet in your galaxy. And if you look at my station here, so you basically see all these small item here. That's all the interstellar logistics ships which basically go around. There's 5 different resources you can call. So let's take, for example, again, the iron and the copper. Then the second changes. The towers here can hold a maximum of 10,000. And this is important. When you start the game, this is 5,000. And when you start the game, this is 10,000. There's a research, again, which allows you to increase the tower, and it's this logistic carrier capacity. So at one stage here, you will see here unlocks plus 20 logistic drones carrying capacity, plus 200 logistic drone vessels carrying capacity. So your drones will basically transport more, and your various stations hold more resources. So since I'm end of game, don't be surprised if you see figures here that you don't see in your game. They increase with research, but it's irrelevant to this tutorial. You have two types of vessels. You have the normal drones, the logistic drones. It holds double the size, of course. It's all double, more or less. And it holds here these nice looking logistic vessels, which are basically put on here. These ones are going to be used to be transportation between two systems, two planets, and the drones are for local transportation. And then the last one which you have here is the space warpers. If a vessel goes out into space to fetch resources and it needs to warp, it will basically use two of these, one to go there and one to come back. If there is no warpers in here, it will not go beyond warp distance. And the warp distance is basically here. It says distance to enable warp. It's 12 AU by default. So anything that is 12 AU away from this tower, he will not fetch it if he doesn't have warpers. If he has warpers, he will basically warp there and fetch it. So that's the basic difference. Now let's go into the detail. First one is you will see here again exactly the same, the local remote, the local storage, and the local demand. Supply, storage, demand. So it's the same as here. Supply, demand, storage. It just says local because it means local supply, it will provide to the local planet. Local demand, it will ask from the local planet. So basically see here, it's asking the iron, so it's sending out the drones and it's filling up with iron. And then local storage means it will basically store. So whenever something comes in from a line, it will basically just input it. Okay, so the remote is same logic. So either it will remote supply, it will remote demand, or it will remote storage. Remote storage means it will neither supply nor demand remotely. Remote demand, it will basically ask. And you see here already, going up immediately. So I'm basically asking for remote iron, and immediately all the systems that basically provide iron got that demand, and now they're sending in from remote planets. I don't know exactly where, you can't see it, but I know it's from abroad. It's basically sending in the iron. So I'm going to stop this. So they will be sending, going back. You can also, and that I didn't see in the other one, you can here also fix the amount of resources you want to call or have in this tower. For example, if I put this at 100 and I make a remote demand, he will bring actually in resources. He will bring 2,000. Even though I asked only for 100, I will come to the detail. This is quite important to understand at a later stage. So he brings 2,000, although I only asked 100. Now let's go to these settings here. And that's where a lot of it I never really understood and would have liked to have a tutorial about this earlier on. Same again, maximum charging power means how much power it's going to use to charge. So I tend to do this always at a maximum. Transport range of drones 180, it's the same as this one. It's something I've never used, to be fair. It's for fine-tuning where he gets. Transport range of vessels. This is a slider which I have vastly underestimated. What does this one do? So let's try and understand the transport range of vessels. It basically means how far will these logistic vessels go to either bring resources or fetch resources. So if I put this to infinity, it means no matter where the resource is, this vessel will go and try and fetch it if I need it. Or this vessel will go and try and deliver it if it is called. So if I put this at 1 light year, so that's more or less the closest, the smallest distance you can put. So basically whenever I call a resource, this vessel will basically look, is there this resource within 1 light year? If yes, he will fetch it. If no, he won't do anything. And the same, if I make this on deliver, this vessel will look, is there someone asking this resource within 1 light year? Yes, then he's going to start delivering, if of course he has it. For example, if another tower was asking for a resource 2 light years away, he would not deliver it. Why is this so important? Well, the point is that you can basically define how far your resources will be transported. I mean, when you look currently at my map, that is something I underestimated. And I basically started building in 3 different corners of the galaxy, and I didn't set up my towers properly, at least not as good as I wanted. So you basically see here the resources between these 3 systems are being transported. And that is something you should try and limit in the game, because transportation from here to here takes a long time, and it's way better to have the resources locally. It's faster and it consumes less energy, because the further away a certain vessel needs to bring in a resource, the more energy it's actually going to use to start off. And of course you need the warpers. So if you plan this from the beginning quite closely, so whenever you put down a tower, you really should ask yourself the question, how far do I want actually these resources to be transported, and how far do I actually these resources to be called? And this will determine it. There's another point. So I put this on 1 light year. If I now ask here for resources, basically, even though I know there is no resource being produced within 1 light year, nevertheless, I'm being provided this. That is something that was in the beginning confusing for me, but the point is that this restriction only applies to this vessel. If I have somewhere in the galaxy another tower which basically says provide with infinity, it will provide to this tower. This restriction only applies to these vessels and not to the tower. So only these vessels will look at this restriction. So whenever these vessels are asked to make a certain action, they will see, am I allowed to do this? Yes, no. So the further away the resource is, then they will fetch it. Of course, they would need warpers here. Even if I had warpers, which I just put in, these vessels will not go fetch it beyond 1 light year. This one is then, when will the vessel start to warp? You could have quite a large system. I don't know how big the system is. I mean, now let's see. So I basically have planets 2 AU away. This, yeah. So if, for example, if I were to transport between these 2 planets, my logistic drones will normally not warp. But I could basically reduce this to 0.5. So even within the same system, my logistic vessels will start to warp from one planet to another and then be quicker. They will be quicker, but it will cost space warpers. And space warpers are, I would say, not the cheapest item in the game, but they're affordable. So I would normally recommend to leave it as 12. So within the system, they shouldn't drone. They shouldn't actually warp. Then we come to the last 3 items, which we already basically saw. This is the minimum loan of drones. So means how quick or how full a drone can fly. And this is the same for vessels. Now again, I basically called in here these resources. And he basically brought me 2,000, although I asked 100. Why? Even if I put this here at 1%, so since these vessels can transport 2,000, he would basically need to bring me 200. So if I delete this and put again up and I say I want only 100 and there's going to be a remote demand, it still brings 2000. Well, if you remember what I said about the transfer range of vessels, basically the minimum load of vessels is exactly the same. It only applies to these ones. So if I put a minimum here, it means it restricts these logistic vessels, not the tower and not the other ones. Why is this so important is if you, for example, want to transport items like production items between systems. Let's say I want to call in these miniature particle collider. This is typically an item you're not going to use them in the 20,000s, but this is something that normally you would transport in small quantities. So I would put this at 100 and I would say remote demand. And eventually, if there is enough resources abroad, he will basically bring 100 here. I suspect I'm currently not producing these. Let me try another one which I might be producing. These ones, let's see, 100 remote demand. Yes, he basically brings 200. Why 200? Well, most probably I have the other towers which I normally have at 10%. 10% means out of 2000, so 200 is the minimum he will transport, and the other tower is definitely put at 10%, so the other power basically brings 200. Last but not least, the output cargo stack exactly the same as the planetary stations. You can either say you always take out full, or you can limit the amount being taken out. That's the standard functions of these towers. There's a third tower, which I will briefly go in, which is the Orbital Collector. This is a gas giant. So if you find gas giants, and there's quite a number in the game, they will basically be orbited by one planet, a gas giant, and it would tell you what they produce. So they produce collectible hydrogen and collectible deuterium. So if you're on a gas giant and you are orbiting it, so you take any type of orbital collector, and the specificity of these is, first of all, you can't place them anywhere on this planet except on the equator. So if I go to the equator, which should be here, they turn blue. So you basically can only put them on the equator. So that's the first limitation. And the second limitation, you see, you can only put them on these lines. So the number of places you can put them is very restricted, and they must always be 2 squares apart. So once you put that down, what does this tower do? It just does its job. It's harvesting whatever resources there is, currently the hydrogen and the deuterium. And it will basically store them. And here I basically can say what I can do. So local, there's nothing you can do. So it is always local storage. And then remote, you can either say remote supply or remote storage. Remote storage means that this resource is just going to stay here. That's it. So it won't be transported anywhere. So if you put both on them on local storage, you can as well just limit the tower. It is useless. So you would basically just put it on remote supply. So whenever there is somewhere a resource being called from an interstellar logistic tower, it will basically fly here and pick it up. So that's nothing else. You cannot put in drones in here. You cannot put in ships in here. You cannot limit anything. They produce their own energy. So it's really like a put down and forget. We have covered the planetary stations, the interstellar stations, as well as the orbital collector. There's a last tower which can be considered as a tower, but is not really a tower, but it works like one, that has been implemented with the latest patch, and that is the advanced mining machine. I recommend you to research this item as quickly as possible This is really awesome. And if you go into the tag, you basically find it in your tag under photon spotlight mining technology, which unlocks this beauty. So this beauty here basically is using exactly the same logic as a tower, but it will also say either storage or supply. It cannot demand. It can either give to someone or it can store. If you put it on store, that means all the resources will stay here and no drone will come and fetch whatever it produces. So the only way then to get the resources out of these miners is with a belt. Now, the advantage of this miner is it has also this upgrade of output cargo stack count. So it basically puts 4 items on the belt, and thus this belt, which normally transports 30, now transports 120 items per second. So that's one thing, how to get resources out. And when you look, there's like a lot of output, so you could take out a lot of resources. But if you put it on supply, basically any drone on the planet, so this only works locally. So any drone, drone or any request here on the planet. So if I make a demand here, they will go around and they will take from these miners everywhere around the planet. You will most probably see at one stage coming one. See, there's one coming here. He will fetch 200 and then bring it back to the tower. This works only on the planet. So if you basically want to mine this resource and provide the resource from one planet to another planet, you would basically put down an interstellar logistic systems. You would take the resource you want to get. So you would say, I want to get this locally. So drones in this. So I need to put in drones. So the drones will go and fetch it. And you would put remote supply, and you would put in the logistic vessels. So locally, it will basically go fetch it everywhere on the planet, and then it will provide to whatever planet in the system is requesting it. So that's the way how you can use these to basically provide resources across the galaxy. And when you look at this planet, that's basically what I did here. You see every single resource on this planet, I tapped it. And you see all these vessels going to these 4 interstellar towers or stations. And when you click on them, you see this is the logic. Coal, ask it locally, give it remote. Silicon ore, ask it locally, give it remote. So all these resources are being provided to interstellar production. There's one last item which is very important about these towers and which will make you love them. You can basically click on any tower anywhere in this system on the planet. You can basically click it wherever you are, and you can take out the resource of that tower. So this is, you don't have to have the items in your inventory. So that is quite useful also once you get to a stage where you're basically going to store your production items in these towers, and whenever you need them, like for example, if I were to need the antimatter fuel, so look at my inventory currently, I'm like, oh, I don't have enough, I need more of these. So I go to the overview, I see my towers, I see, okay, which one has them? Okay, here are some. So I'm going to take, so I right click on this, and then I say how many I want. So I can either take them all or just a few with the right click. So I keep it right clicked, and then I take it and I put it in my inventory. And basically here it's directly there. So I can just take it and put them here. And the other way around also, I can click on this tower and I can take the resources I have and put them back. So this is a huge advantage of at one stage of managing your resources to build. So I think I covered it all. I hope I didn't miss anything. If so, well, just leave me a comment in the below link and I will have a look at it and see if there's anything I missed and give you some comments on it. Thanks for watching and hope to see you in my next video.